Welcome everyone to the video. Welcome to the channel. This is gonna be episode number 2 in this new channel of mine that I've created. And after I created that first like intro episode, I was kind of thinking, what should I really kick this off with? And I think I'm gonna lean into Christianity, the Bible, a couple of stories and from the Bible that I find that are really, really important and have a deeper meaning than a lot of people believe they may or may not have. And I was trying to struggle with like what should I title this? What's going to be the theme? Yes, I have the two stories, but and so I came up with three words, and it's loosening our grip, and our grip on what? A grip on things, and I'll dive into this you know, here. I do, write, I have a script for this. I wrote it. I was, I did my outline and started jotting down my ideas just because most of my other social media content, it's all, spontaneous. Most of it, the vast majority of it is spontaneous. I really don't do too much, as far as prep for that. But for this one here, because of the nature of it, what we're diving into, I want to make sure I cross my T's and dot my I's. Sometimes when you're, just doing it spontaneously, you might get things wrong. And, this type of content, will bring a lot of people to the comments. I want to make sure, at least I got myself, like I said, got my T's crossed and my I's dotted. And I said that in the right order. Um, but first, I want to show you. So you see me drinking from a mug. I really like this mug because it reminds me. My father used to have mugs like this, but they were plastic ones you would get from the um, uh, it's like what do you call them? Gas stations and all that. I've never seen ceramic ones when I was little, but I see these now. Like this is a really cool mug, and I collect mugs. Just has some more water in there. But I just picked this up today. This is from Jackson, no, not Jackson, from Jamestown, California. Confused there for a second. So I just picked this up to this past weekend, and it was a really cool mug. And these are mugs that I collect, and these are by Deneen Pottery. Now, they produce these mugs. They're really nice handcrafted mugs, and I have a whole bunch of these, a bunch in my collection. I really like these mugs, and I like coffee as well too. So it kind of goes hand in hand. But I've never seen one with a lid before, so when I saw it with a lid, I'm like, "Yeah, of course I'm buying that." I'm buying it not only because it's a Denning mug, and I don't have this one in my collection, but I'm also because it has a lid. So I really do. I have cupboards and cupboards of these mugs. They're so cool. But it's something I collect. So a little something about myself. Um, so I really wanted to start this off, and I'll probably start most of these off with just by saying, I don't now where I'm at today, I don't consider myself a Christian. I grew up Christian. I spent like I think I kind of stopped going to church. That is probably I think it was around 19 or 20, somewhere right around there. I don't remember the exact year it occurred, but it was right around the millennium. And I was actually not necessarily voted out of the church, but I was voted as not a active voting member of the church, and that was because they were ousting the original and founding pastor of the church. Founding, they were ousting him for somebody else, and it was a very, the church had gone through many divisions over the years. And so my allegiance, it was with that pastor and everybody that decided to follow him. They were, like I said, not necessarily voted out. Like, you could still come and attend the church. You just had no, you couldn't attend any of the business meetings they would have and, vote for who's next pastor or whatever, budgets and all that stuff. So now and then I was like, okay, well, hey, time to move on. But that's not really the reason why I currently don't consider myself Christian. And I'll definitely dive into this in a video it'll have its own dedicated video. There's some time later, just because it's a very, uh, it's hard for me to describe, and it's an event that occurred to me, in my teen years, and it's really changed my outlook on life. Now, it didn't immediately it did definitely have an immediate effect, but I really didn't completely understand it until really, really later on in life, and I'll dive more into that in I might give little snippets here and there of it, but it really deserves its own dedicated video as to why I believe what I believe today. Um, or how I believe today. I still believe in God. I still definitely believe in God. And okay, let's get into this here. But uh, I still believe there are very powerful lessons that can be learned from the Bible. It's something I grew up with. I've read it many, many times, cover to cover. Sometimes because I had no choice. I was in church and I was like, you got to read the Bible. And sometimes on my own, trying to seek answers as well too. And a lot of the stories, a lot of stories in the Bible, they still speak to something that is very human, like attachment, control, loss, power, and letting go. And like I said, today we're going to look at two stories from the Bible. One from the Old Testament, which is the story of Abraham and how he was asked by God to sacrifice his own son. When he had a son, when he had a child, his first child, and when he had his first child, and they had wanted a baby, him and his wife were trying to have a baby, and they finally got a baby, and then the Lord said, it is time to sacrifice. And then the other is when Jesus was challenged by the Pharisees. They were challenged about paying taxes to Rome or to Caesar, and they were trying to trap him, get him trapped. And on the surface, these two stories just seem completely different, right? One's talking about money, and one's talking about actually, sacrificing your son, sacrificing your child. And we'll definitely take dive deeper into those, because I definitely believe they're both asking the same question. Um, what is that question? That you are holding on. What are you holding on so tightly to, and why? Really, really, you know, or I should say, we as people value our things. One of the reasons why I wanted to show you that mug that I just picked up. I had I place a value in that. Not everybody places a value in mugs, but I place a value in that. It's not necessarily very valuable, but we place a lot of value into our things, quite a bit of value. Collectible figurines, collect Star Wars. I collect Star Wars stuff. Your house, the house you purchased. There's so many people, the vast majority of people, there's a lot of not just money invested into the house, but a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into a house, right? And the whole process of purchasing a house is very, very stressful. And, so we put a lot of value then into that house, into your car, or if you collect cars, if you have more than one car, you obviously place a lot of value into that, and ultimately our money, right? We definitely we place a lot of value there in our money, and we, you know, get upset or angry sometimes when something happens to them, when something breaks, especially when something breaks at your house. Knock on wood, nothing like your water heater, your washer and dryer. Something gets stolen. Something of yours gets stolen. Your house, something from your house gets stolen. Uh, Something like your car gets stolen, your car gets broken. Somebody dings your door in your car, right? And usually the normal reaction is to be like, get angry, get frustrated. But that reaction can definitely reveal something a lot deeper. Um, and it really reveals how tightly we are attached, uh, uh, how how we attach ourselves to what we own. And I'll probably repeat this a few times, is that it's not wrong. It's not wrong to enjoy these things. It's not wrong to have or enjoy money. It's not wrong to have, building a life, in this world. It's not wrong to do those things and enjoy it. Um, but there's a difference between enjoying something and being owned by it. Everything from this earth, everything that's from this earth will eventually return to the earth. All our possessions, all of our bodies, will eventually go back to the earth. Any structure, house, buildings, anything we build eventually goes back. It will go back. They're all temporary by nature. And we cling to them though, as if they're permanent fixtures. They're permanently gonna be there. That car is permanently gonna be in that condition. It's gonna break down. It's gonna, deteriorate over time. There's nothing we can do about it. So, uh, the story of Abraham isn't necessarily about possession, but it's more about a relationship. And, Abraham is asked to sacrifice his son. And, if you really, really think about it for a moment, we've all, if you're a Christian growing up, you all heard the story. And, but our bonds with people are the strongest attachments that we have. Um, a bond with your mother, with your father, with your parents, grandparents, with your own children. Um, That's why when losing someone, it can really whenever you lose someone, it can really devastate your entire world. Your entire world can really come collapsing down around you. Um, when something like that happen, an event, when someone that close to you ends up, passing away. I think that's what really makes this story so intense. It forces the question, you know, do we own the people in our lives, or are we simply stewards of them? And if we bring this into the context of children, it becomes even more powerful. Maybe we're not the owners of our children. Maybe we're more of caretakers. The children are placed into our care. You know, by who? By God. Um, I always say this all the time. I always repeat this all the time. Children are gifts. Children are a gift to us. I do understand not everybody's able to have children, unfortunately, but there were other gifts, and um, but really, really, children are placed in our care. They're given, bodies formed from the earth. And, if you do believe in Christianity, if you do believe in God, or if you believe in a soul, they're given souls. And our role isn't ownership. You know, we don't give them that soul. God gives them that soul. Um, and so our role isn't ownership. It's a responsibility to love them, guide them, and protect them. Ultimately, we don't possess them. And it's a very uncomfortable idea, because it challenges. What does it challenge? Control. That's what it challenges. Challenge control. It's a challenge to attachment. It reminds us that, physical form belongs to this world. And if you believe it was created by God, it ultimately belongs first to the creator, not to us. And, that doesn't make love necessarily weaker. It makes it, humbler. Um, then looking on to the next story, when Jesus is cornered by the Pharisees and asked whether people should be paying, taxes to Caesar. We all have heard. If you're Christian, I shouldn't say we all. If you're Christian, grew up Christian, yeah, I heard this story. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this story. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, you know, all the stories in the Bible, over the years. And this story was always a trap. And these two stories always stuck out to me, and which is why I'm bringing them up. And this, when Jesus is asked this question, it's a trap. It's to either get him to say, yes, and then it looks like he's in support of Rome, or it's to get him to say no, and then he looks rebellious. And yeah, that's the insane. Back then, going that route, going against Rome was, not good. So what did he say? He asked them, well, let me have a coin. Well, I forgot what they called it. Um, and then he says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God. And so most people just think, it's about the money. It's about, uh, paying your taxes. I definitely believe that it is bigger than that. And it's about recognizing what belongs to this world and what doesn't belong to this world. Money belongs to this world, to you know, these systems that we create here on earth. Um, the politics, everything, and it is, and whatever power that politicians have, that belongs on this earth. That's a system we created. Our status, on this earth belongs to this earth. Um, and so give it all back to the world. Give it all back. What comes from this world, give it back. Don't confuse it with anything that is eternal. And it doesn't mean that money is evil. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't participate in politics or in society. It doesn't mean that. It means really don't confuse these temporary systems with ultimate destiny. You know, uh, it's something. If something can be taken from you, if something can collapse, if something can fade, then maybe it was never meant to define you. Um, and when I look at the world right now, it feels very much very me first. Me first. Everything's about an image. If it's social media, politics, and culture, we're all wrapped up in the economy. I do follow a lot of people on social media. They're talking about the economy and where it's at right now, and are we in a recession, not a recession? We're so wrapped up in our status, wrapped up in our own identity. Are we Republican? Are we Democrat, conservative, liberal? Even the Super Bowl has become this political thing. It's anti-American. I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to watch it. It's very American. It's not American. One side's having their own party. One side's having their own party. And, when, when you take a step back, yes, all this stuff is very fun to debate, very interesting, very, engaging. It's fun to go back and forth and trade barbs with people. But when you take it to heart, when it defines our peace, that's different. If a political label shakes your identity, if losing followers ruins, on social media ruins your confidence, if the market starts dropping or goes into recession to destroy your hope, maybe, or you feel you feel it's destroying your hope. Maybe, you're just holding on to these things just a little too tightly. And, yeah, like I said, I'm going to repeat this. Let's going to repeat this. It's not that, these things are bad. Money isn't bad. Politics isn't bad. Social media isn't bad. Believe it or not, social media isn't bad. It's all in the intent. What are we using these things? No, What are we using these things for? Are we using these things? Are we using these things, or are we using these things, or are they using us? That's how I wanted to say that. Because there is as far as having things or wanting things, there is a pattern. Yeah, you want it, you crave it, you chase after it, you get it, and then what? Then you're on to the next thing, right? Yeah, that one you've gone through the whole process of acquiring something, and it just doesn't really end with that one thing, does it? So it's never enough. And that is the nature of human craving. It's never going to be enough. It's never going to fully fill you. Um, so our souls and fulfillment. So our souls, the part of us that definitely, if you believe, again, I should always state, if that's what you believe in, um, and that is the part of us that houses, our true being. That is what we should be valuing, not just in ourselves, but also in others as well too. If there's something, if there is something eternal about us, and I definitely believe there is, um, if there is something really, really deeper than just, our physical form, then that's where I believe that fulfillment actually lives, where you'll actually get filled, not all these things that we're constantly chasing all the time, these things that we're craving, then we get, then we move on to the next thing. Um, that's in the eternal is definitely where I believe fulfillment can be achieved. Um, and true. How do we, in the eternal with others around us and with other souls, and it doesn't mean just that companionship with other souls. This doesn't mean spending, going out, spending money together. Um, you don't have to be going to the mall, shopping, buying things, just enjoying someone's presence. You can be there in shared happiness, and even in shared sadness. Uh, it's okay to feel things like loss, but together, doesn't it always feel better when other people are there? Um, even when people are angry too, being there for someone. Um, we're all human, and we all make mistakes, but we all feel anger, we all feel sadness, we all, some of us feel loss a lot different than others. Uh, but a lot of these things should never completely destroy us. It should never, cripple our outlook on life. It's great to be happy and enjoy success. It's great to feel all these things that the world has to offer. How good does it feel to be out there on a nice, spring day? I'm in California. It's starting to feel like spring now. We were out, this past weekend, and it was, it rained for most of the week last week, and so or early, yeah, last week now, and now we're getting to enjoy this great weather. The sun, and yeah, it's great to be able to enjoy all this stuff. Um, and the point isn't really to completely detach from life. The point is to not let these all these temporary things control your peace. Because all these things will change. They will all fade. You know, our things will all break and deteriorate. Um, but character, passion, the connections we make with other souls, so those are deeper. And if we're gonna hold tightly to anything, we should be looking, I believe we should be looking, to the eternal part of each of us. Um, and I definitely believe that these two stories are that this these that these 2 stories are what these 2 stories are really pointing to, Abraham, challenges attachment, to relationships, and, Caesar, the Pharisees challenging Jesus, the attachment to systems, both are asking kind of the same question, what are you gripping, and why? And definitely, like I said, enjoy this stuff, enjoy the world, participate in politics, participate in social media, build in it, you know. Um, I'm loving it. But remember, everything born from this earth will return to it. And if there's something eternal in us, I definitely believe so, that that's where our focus could really be. And we shouldn't be focused on, ownership, image, labels. But just remember, be a stewardship of these things. And maybe, peace comes when we finally just loosen our grip just a little bit at a time. All right. That's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. I'll also be cutting up these videos into different shorts and dropping them on the channel as well too. Get little tidbits, not the full story, but little tidbits of the story. So you definitely can look out for those. And I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you in the next one.